You, Janet.
Okay, good morning. WWALS Watershed Coalition is glad that you are here to watch our webinar with Emily Bell, Wildflowers of the Suwannee River. Emily was born in Florida. She spent her youth exploring the springs along the Suwannee River and chasing waves up and down the East Coast. Her deep love for nature began in those early adventures and shaped her lifelong dedication to protecting Florida's natural environment. She currently serves as the communications coordinator for the Florida Wildflower. I can't speak today. The Florida Wildflower Foundation, is a role that she's held since 2022. Before that, Emily coordinated invasive species programs through UFIFAS Extension and the Florida Invasive Species Partnership. With over a decade of experience in environmental outreach and conservation, Emily brings deep knowledge and enthusiasm to every project she touches. Take it away, Emily.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I am going to get my screen set up here, so bear with me for just a moment. Okay, and then it always moves everything around on me, so let me make sure I have the boxes I need. Okay, so thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to join y'all to talk about this topic, wildflowers of the Suwannee River Basin in Florida. And I'll share more about why as I just dive right in here. So I did really quickly want to talk about who we are. The Florida Wildflower Foundation works to protect, connect, and expand native wildflower habitats through education, research, planting, and conservation. Our website has a ton of resources if you are looking to learn about how to plant native in your own landscape, which is one of the biggest things you can do to help your natural environment. We've got handouts for wildflowers for all different kinds of situations. We've got handouts for attracting different types of species, and we have the 20 Easy to Grow magazine. These are resources that you can download yourself on the website, or you can order from us. If you're a member, you get a discount on the order. And I believe we only request shipping, and that's through our operations coordinator, Rose. We also offer grant programs. We have a Viva Florida Landscape Demonstration Garden grant for communities. We have a Seedlings for Schools grant for schools, and our newest grant is the Seeds of Knowledge grant for native plant demonstration gardens at libraries, and you can find all the information on those on our website as well. We are primarily brought to you by sales of the Florida State Wildflower License Plate. That image there is our old plate. We've had the new plate on the road for a while now, and we are actually celebrating 25 years of having that plate on the road this month. June 2000 was the first state wildflower plate on the road. So real quick, I want to do a bigger picture before we narrow down into the specific area we're going to talk about. So Florida is really wealthy in native plants and plant communities. We've got over 3,000 native plants, 230 of which are endemic, and about 170 of those would be considered wildflowers. We've got 566 threatened or endangered native plant species, and we're the 7th most botanically diverse state in the contiguous US. And I don't think that number took area into account. So I think, places like California and Texas have an advantage there, but we're very botanically diverse. So let's talk about the small area we're going to cover today, the plant communities of the Suwannee River Basin. So this map is from the University of Florida. It was put out in 1967. And I know you can't read the key there, but these colors represent different plant communities. So today we're going to be talking about this little swath of Florida in, we'll call it North Central, between the East Coast and the Panhandle. We've got the Suwannee River coming up and going up into the Okefenokee, and then I think that's the Withlacoochee there. And so you can see here, we've got some primary types of plant communities. We've got a lot of sandhill in yellow that really just comes right up against those rivers. So those are those high, old, ancient sand dunes. We've also got pine flatwoods in pink. So that's a good bit. We've got some upland Mesic hardwood. That's this green color. See, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we've got some hydric hammocks. So that's the purple. So really the purple is like the water, as you can see, so that you can kind of follow the rivers with the hydric hammock. So those are really the key habitats we're going to talk about today. And when I was preparing this, I struggled with how to organize it because there's so many different ways you can view wildflowers. You can do seasonal, you can do by families or genus. So what I decided to do was I broke them up by these 4 main plant communities and then also tried to follow the season for each one. So we're going to reset the spring, winter, spring each time we start a new plant community. So with that, let's dive into the sandhill to dry pine flatwoods. So I'm gonna go back real quick. I did combine sandhills and dry pine flatwoods because we also have wet pine flatwoods. And so I'll explain that a little more. So the sandhill / dry pine flatwoods, I can't talk either, is going to be our longest section because these sandhills and dry pine flatwoods represent our really open spaces without a really dense overstory of trees, right? So we're going to have a higher abundance of those herbaceous or a higher diversity of those herbaceous wildflowers. Once we get into the hardwoods and the forests, a lot of those are shaded out and we're left with more shrubs. And we are going to talk about some flowering trees and shrubs today as well. So starting with early spring, if you are out walking amongst these areas, you're going to come across a lot of violet species. So the genus is Viola. Let me say this too. I'll give the common and scientific name for all the species. I will butcher quite a bit of the scientific names, but they are very important for to have your identification for sure. So I will share those as well. So violets, there's going to be some cases in which I'm really going to give more of a broad overview of the genus versus specific species, and that is the case with violas. The most common one is the common blue violet, Viola sororia, but there's also a palmata and a few other ones, and so really you want to look at the leaves to distinguish because quite a few of them have these purple to light purple flowers, and they can vary in color. The common blue violet flower can be very light purple to a very deep, almost blue. And so it's the same species. I think it depends on kind of the soil and different environmental factors and genetics. So you've got your violets. You also may be lucky enough to come across some blue star. So this one pictured here is Amsonia ciliata, fringed blue star. There is another Amsonia you may come across as well. And then we're going to get into one of my favorite genuses that are also going to bloom in the spring, which is the pawpaws, the Asiminas. And so in this part of Florida, the 3 main ones, well, we're going to get to one more, but it's going to be in a different habitat. The 3 main ones you're going to find in these sandhills and dry pine flatwoods are Asimina angustifolia, that's our narrow leaf pawpaw. Asimina incana, that's our woolly pawpaw. And you can see its leaves here. You can see how you can tell they kind of have that white feather coating, and it's really soft, and so woolly, hence the common name. And you're also going to come across Asimina pygmaea. This one's going to grow lower to the ground, whereas these 2 are going to be kind of taller. And then we're going to get into some vacciniums. Now, there is going to be some crossover in these habitats. You'll run into some of these vacciniums in the Mesic forest as well, but you will also come across them in the dry flatwoods, especially on the edges of some of those lakes that can be found in the flatwoods and sandhill areas. So, but really the one you're going to find really prevalent in these dry areas is this guy over here. This is Vaccinium mercenites, shiny blueberry. We also have deerberry, Vaccinium. Let me check my list real quick, make sure I get that one right. Vaccinium staminium, and then of course sparkleberry, Vaccinium arboreum. This one you really will find once you get into those Mesic hardwoods as well, really in abundance in the spring. So this one's kind of you can find across different habitats. And then in the same family, we have the Lyonias, and you'll find those as well. So this is rusty staggerbush, Lyonia. This is one I struggle with. Pharyngenia. You'll also come across coastal plain staggerbush over on this side, Lyonia mariana, and Lyonia lucida, the shiny staggerbush, or the shiny Lyonia, or fetterbush. That's why I always give the scientific name too, because these have a lot of different common names. All right, let's talk about some pricklies. We've got some pricklies in the sandhill and the pine flatwoods. One of the most famous, tread softly or touch me not, or finger rot. This one has a lot of exciting common names, but the genus is Cnidaria stimulosus. Oh, I'm sorry. Niduloscolus stimulosus. I'm gonna butcher that one too. And this guy will sting you if you brush up against it. Many of you, if you grew up in Florida, may have had that experience. But it doesn't last too long. You feel it, and then if you rinse off or just give it a minute, it'll go away. Opuntia. The genetics of Opuntia are really murky when you dive into them. So there's Opuntia austrina, humifusa, and I think even another species that are often confused with each other. So that's a good one to always kind of look up and reference in the exact area you're in, what species is generally accepted to be there. We're also going to come across Cirsium hirridulum. This is a really interesting one. It is primarily, I'm actually located over in Nassau County on the East Coast, up in North Florida, but I spend a lot of time in Suwannee and Lafayette counties. And this one, the common names are both purple and yellow thistle, and that's because it can have either a purple or even a really light pink or yellow flower. In my experience, and this is purely anecdotal, over here on the East Coast, we almost only see yellow flowers. I rarely see a pink to deep pink flower over here. So this one is from Central Florida, North Central Florida, where I think out there you guys are mostly just going to see the pink or dark, even almost a deep red flower. Getting into a few more, we're going to find some milkweed, and we're going to talk about more milkweeds. But the first milkweed that blooms is sandhill milkweed, Asclepias humistrata. This is an early blooming milkweed. It's going to be accompanied by plants like Baldwina angustifolia, coastal plain honeycomb head. And this little guy here is after the plant has bloomed, it leaves its kind of shape here, hence the common name, the honeycomb head. Also, a favorite in the pine flatwoods is this Baptisia alba, white wild indigo. Lupines are wonderful. And here I'm gonna pop a link in the chat for you guys for more information. I can get it all copied. So you might run across 3 different species of lupine in the Suwannee River Basin. The first one here, Lupinus villanosus. This is your lady lupine. Now, this one, Lupinus diffusus, as it was previously known across the state, sky blue lupine, has recently been split into a number of different genuses based on location. So in North Central Florida, I believe now it's all Lupinus ocalinensis. But this link that I shared goes over that current research that split out those species into different, and it was based on genetics as well as morphological differences. So this link will cover all the lupine species in Florida and talk about how Lupinus diffusus was recently separated out into different species. And then our only lupine with the palmate leaves, most of our lupines are unifoliate with their single leaves, but the only palmate leafed lupine we have in Florida is Lupinus perennis, sundial lupine. And that's a lovely little one as well. This one has been the center of a lot of research recently because it is the sole host for the frosted elfin butterfly, which is threatened. And so FNA and some other folks, the Florida Natural Areas Inventory is FNA, have been working on locating populations of it and studying the butterfly to make sure that it can find its host plant. Some other interesting plants you might come across. And another thing I tried to do was group these as plants you might see together. So if you're walking through, especially a dry pine flatwood, you're very likely to come across all three of these together. We've got the Queen's Delight, and I'm spacing on its species name. It is Stillingia sylvatica. You may also come across a Stylesma. There's a couple different species of this one. This one is patens, Stylesma patens, narrow-leaf coastal plain dawnflower. You may also come across angustifolia, which is another coastal plain dawnflower. And then Ruellia. We'll talk about Ruellia again when we get to the Mesic forest, I think. But this little one, Ciliosa, Ruellia ciliosa, is the one predominantly in these drier areas. And you can kind of tell if you can see those leaves that they're a bit hairy, hence that species name, Ciliosa. Very low growing. The dawnflower and the Ciliosa are both, the dawnflower kind of climbs along the ground and the Ciliosa is very low growing, and the Queen's Delight's going to get a little taller. All right, we're back to milkweed. So we had that humistrata, it bloomed first. Now we're getting later into the summer, so we're gonna have even more milkweeds bloom. And the ones you might find, we have what, 21, 26? We've got a lot of milkweeds native to Florida, but there's only a handful you're gonna find in this section we're talking about. So up here we have clasping milkweed, Asclepias amplexicaulis. And the clasping name, and I believe the amplexicaulis as well, comes from the way these leaves are, sorry about that, are really clasping the stem there. And you can't see it too well in this picture, but they really are just right up against the stem. Down here, we have Asclepias verticillata. This is a very small milkweed with whorled leaves. The flowers are tiny. Here we have Asclepias tomentosa, velvet leaf milkweed. You can see these really wavy leaves are a really good indicator of this plant. And then, of course, the one everybody knows, the butterfly milkweed, Asclepias tuberosa, with its bright, sunny orange flowers. So Asclepias is a really important genus. As we know, it's the host plant to the monarch butterfly, but it also serves as a nectar source for a lot of different bees. Ants actually really like the sugars out of milkweeds as well. All right, and again, this is a grouping you're going to probably see all growing together here. And we're getting into summer. So we're getting our black-eyed Susans. This is Rudbeckia hirta. This is a little flowering vine, Centrosema virginiana. Butterfly pea, it's a common name there. Of course, we've got our tar flower coming in. So that's Bahara racemosa. And then our green eyes. You might actually come across both species of green eyes in north central Florida. This one here is Burlandia pumila, the soft green eyes. There are two species of Burlandaria in Florida. Another really fun dry flatwoods sandy sites plant is yucca. This is Yucca filamentosa, which I believe is the only one you're going to find in inland north central Florida. The other one, Yucca allifolia, I think is only coastal, but don't quote me. So this is a really fascinating plant. Puts up these tall flower spikes with these white flowers. It has a lot of edible properties, so Native Americans, indigenous people used it quite a bit. It also has, you can see it puts off these filaments, hence the scientific name filamentosa. It has the strongest fibers of any plant, I believe, in North America. So you can make cordage and things like that from it. I think we're getting to the end of the Sandhills. We've got our gopher apple. This one recently changed genuses. It's now Geobalanus oblongifolius. So this is, again, another low-growing one you're going to find kind of creeping across the ground. It creates, after blooming, it creates these small apple-like, but a little more oval-shaped fruits that are loved by gopher tortoises, hence the common name gopher apple. Here we've got Kalmia hirsuta. This one has a lot of colorful common names. The one I know is hairy wiki. So we only have 2 Kalmia species in Florida. The other one is the mountain laurel, which is only in a really small portion of the Panhandle because it's more of a Appalachian species. And it's so interesting to me because they're in the same genus, but they're very different, right? The mountain laurel is a full-on tree. This Kalmia hirsuta is really a low-growing herbaceous wildflower. A few more here. We've got the white-mouth dayflower. So that's going to be a Camelina erecta, white-mouth dayflower. Rose rush, Lygodesma. Oh, what's the species on that? Lygodesma aphylla. So this one is interesting. It's puts up this singular stem with this kind of big flower. But really nothing else. So you'll just see these pops of really light purple, pinkish up high, and you can barely see what it's like. Where's that flower? It's like almost looks like it's floating in the air because the stem is so narrow. And then Arnoglossum, this is a really interesting one. Arnoglossum floridanum, the Florida Indian plantain. This is endemic to the Florida pine flatwoods, the dry pine flatwoods. One that is very commonly known, we've got our coral bean, Erythrina herbacea, and then our blue curls, Trichostemas. So here I'm going to give you another link to look at because this is another genus that was recently split out into many different species. And so you're going to want to look at what area of Florida you're in, and that's going to help you know which Trichostema you may be encountering. Previously, they were mostly lumped into Trichostema dichotomum, and so that may still be what is in North Central Florida. I'm not sure at this point. That was recent. I think in 2023 they published that work. And then moving along, we have some beautiful pea plants. This is, oh my gosh, why am I spacing on it? Chamaecristulata. Yeah, Chamaecrista. Let me find it. Chamaecrista fasciculata, partridge pea. Orangium, one of my favorites, rattlesnake master. This is Orangium eucofolium. And then we're going to have a dry pine flatwoods clematis. So this is clematis. Reticulata, the netted leather flower. We're going to get to another clematis again when we get into the Mesic forest. We're still in the sandhill dry pine flatwoods. I mentioned this is our biggest one. So Agalenus, this is another big genus that can be really difficult to tell in the field. And even on iNaturalist, I think a lot are misidentified. So there's probably 4 or 5 species of Agalenus you might come across. This is the host plant for one of my favorite butterflies, the common buckeye. And here's his little caterpillar down here. If you're lucky, you may even come across a field of coastal plain balm. So this is Dicerandra. This species is Dicerandra lineariflora. Nope, I'm not saying that right. Linearifolia. And it's incredible when you come across a field of this because if you walk through it, the air just fills with this lovely minty smell. Another species of Dicerandra you may come across in this region is densiflora. And so it's going to have a more densely packed flower spike there. That's on my bucket list to photograph. I haven't seen that one yet. And then we're getting into fall, and so our Carphophorus start blooming. This is from, was it left to right? We've got Carphophorus paniculatus, hairy chaffhead. We've got our Carphophorus corymbosum, coastal plain chaffhead or Florida paintbrush, and our Carphophorus odoratissimus, vanilla leaf. This vanilla leaf is another one you can really smell in the air. It's got a really sweet scent to it. And these will bloom, you can see this is actually a roadside photo. These will bloom heavily along roadsides, as well as in the pines. And the butterflies, just, if you want to go look for butterflies, wait till the Carphophorus is blooming. And some of these have been moved into the genus Trilissa, so it's always good to double check that as well. And in the fall, purples and yellows really are the theme. So we're getting into our Liatris. We've got Liatris spicata here and Liatris elegans, pink scale. And so there's quite a few Liatris in north central Florida. I think there might be 5 or 6 you could come across. And then of course our goldenrod solidago, and this is the most common, Solidago odora, excuse me, Chapman's goldenrod. And I always have to mention when I talk about goldenrod, in case anybody doesn't know, goldenrod is not the cause of your allergies. It's actually ragweed, which blooms at the same time. Goldenrod's pollen does not float through the air, and so there's no way, but it is often blamed and thus maligned, unfortunately, and unfairly. I believe wrapping up our fall in the drier sites, you may come across this Euthymia flat top. I think it's called golden flat top. Yeah, slender golden top, Euthymia caroliniana. This is just an insect and pollinator's delight. This patch I came across, of course, had this monarch, but it was also covered in moths and bees and beetles as well. And then our ironweed, so Vernonia. You may come across giant ironweed, Vernonia gigantea, or another common one is Vernonia angustifolia, which is going to be not as tall and have narrower leaves. Oh, I lied. We're still here. This plant, the common name is summer farewell. So that's, we get it in the fall. We're saying goodbye to summer. Another one that the pollinators just can't get enough of. So this is Dahlia pinnata, summer farewell. And with that, we are actually going to move into the wet pine flatwoods. So this one can be a little confusing because it also includes your prairies and cypress swamps that kind of are intermixed with these wet pine flatwoods. And so we're going to start with, in spring, another one of my favorite plant genuses we have in Florida, which are the pinguiculas. Those are our butterworts. So here we have pinguicula, primifolia. I don't want to say it wrong. This is my favorite ping. It's the small flower, pumila. Sorry about that. So pinguicula pumila, small flower butterwort, very tiny. This one you can't miss, right? It's bright as the sun. It's got a bigger flower. It's our Pinguicula lutea, the yellow butterwort. And then about the same size, you've got your Pinguicula caerulea, blue butterwort. And so these are carnivorous plants, and you'll see their basal leaves are close to the ground. I should have put a close-up of the basal leaves. And they are kind of succulent and curled. And when the insects come in, they curl closed, and the plant can digest some of the enzymes there. Oh no, going too far. Keeping in the with the carnivorous plants for a moment, we also have Sarracenia. My brain just stopped working. We also have Sarracenia minor, hooded pitcher plant, and some Drosera. So these are our sundews. This is Drosera capillaris, the pink sundew. And then, so as I mentioned, we're including those swamps and prairies, wet prairies with pine flatwoods. So in these still waters, you will come across our white American water lily, Nymphaea odorata. You'll also come across quite a few Sagittarias. So these are the duck weeds, duck potatoes. The flowers range anywhere from the size of a dime to larger than a quarter, as well as the plants. The plants can be super tiny or super large, but they're all going to have this characteristic flower here. The same can be said for the utricularias. These are our bladderworts. These are actually another carnivorous plant. They have these tiny little bladders. And so we've got like 20 yellow bladderworts in Florida. The size and the structures can vary a little bit to help you distinguish which one you may be coming across. And these ones actually kind of grow right along the margins in the soil, but you'll see many that are directly in the water as well. So we have a milkweed in the wet pine flatwoods as well. We've got Asclepias lanceolata. This is our few flower milkweed. as well as a lot of Scutellaria. So this is Scutellaria integrifolia, hairy skullcap. And then we have a few hibiscus. Florida has quite many hibiscus species. The two most likely you'll come across in north central Florida, though, are the pineland hibiscus, Hibiscus aculotus, and the hibiscus Moschiotus swamp rose mallow. So they look very similar, right? But if you look here, the pineland one has the red all the way out, and this one has the red inside, but the stamen and reproductive parts are white. This one's going to be really on the margins and edges of the wetter areas. This one's going to be more in those wetter areas. These are also a favorite. Previously the genus Polygala, but very recently changed into the genus Seneca. So all of Florida's Polygala species have been moved into Seneca. So this is Polygala, or now Seneca nana, candy root, very cute little low growing wildflower. And this is Seneca lutea. I'm really annoyed at the taxonomist on this one because lutea means yellow, but they chose to name the orange one lutea, which is really confusing. Some people also call this bog Cheetos because it can kind of look, some of the flowers can be much taller and longer. You'll also come across some sunflowers in the wet pine flatwoods. So we've got Helianthus angustifolia here, narrowleaf sunflower. That's one of our most widespread. If you're really lucky, you'll come across my favorite sunflower, which is Helianthus radula. And I like it because it's weird looking. It doesn't put on ray florets typically. It may, sometimes you'll have some really reduced small yellow ray florets, but really you just get those inner florets, and it has these really hairy, thick basal leaves on the ground in a rosette. All right, so now we're moving into the Mesic hardwood forest. We all know that spring is coming after a long Florida winter when we start to see the Gelsium sempervirens blooming. That's always a good sign. It will warm up again as we're all freezing. So that's going to be the yellow jessamine. We also actually do have, you may run across some maculatum. Sorry. Trillium maculatum, spotted wake robin. So we do have some other trilliums in Florida. They're early spring ephemerals. But these are the only ones you'll come across in this part of the state. There's a small population at Silver Springs State Park, as well as some in Alachua County. And then you may come across, but they're very hard to see, these little orchids. So these are Coral Rhiza, get that right? Yep, Coral Horizon Wisteriana spring coral root. These are going to grow really amongst the oaks, and they're so hard to see against the leaf litter because they look, and you can see kind of in this picture, there's some back here, there's some here. I've only ever found them when people told me exactly where they were. They're like, go here, look at this tree, they'll be there. Here's a close-up of those little flowers. And those are going to come in early spring as well. As I mentioned, we have another pawpaw. So this is a Semina parviflora, small flower pawpaw. It can get quite large. It's one of our larger pawpaws. It has much bigger leaves. You can see these leaves here, but it has much tinier flowers. And this one, if you can get the fruit before the animals, which is very difficult to do, it is quite tasty. If you look up into the oak trees, you may be lucky to see some green fly orchid. This is, this genus changed recently too. This is, the species changed. This is Epidendrum conopsium, green fly orchid. This is our only epiphytic orchid in North Florida. You may be familiar with South Florida's abundance of epiphytic orchids. This one actually ranges up into Georgia and maybe even the Carolinas, but it's the only epiphytic orchid that goes that far north. Also come across some red buckeye. This is a lovely flowering shrub. see. It's not a. Hmm. And the scientific name of that one will come to me, but it's I think it's SAC. Sorry, I seem to have lost it, but it's very recognizable. And then some more flowering shrubs. We've got the fringe tree, which will create these beautiful scenes in the hardwood forest. So that's going to be Chionanthus virginica, the white fringe tree. Of course, the flowering dogwood, Cornus florida. We're on the southern end of its range, and there has been some fungal impacts to dogwoods. So a lot of people report that all of their dogwoods are gone. I still see some healthy ones in Suwannee County, so they're definitely still there. And our lovely redbud trees, the Cirsus canadensis. A few more that you don't want to miss. I love this guy. This is the sweet leaf, Sympiotrichum. Make sure I get that right. Simplocos tinctoria, sweet leaf, as well as Walter's viburnum, Viburnum obovatum. So when you're walking through the Mesic hardwood forest in the spring, there's a lot of delightful, light, small, white blooming flowers. You may also come across a possum haw, a crataegus flower as well. And then, of course, we've got our hollies in our Mesic hardwoods. So the 3 species featured here are the most common. So this is Ilex vomitoria, the Yopon holly. In the spring, they're going to have these white flowers. I cheated here. These are the berries in the late fall/winter. This is your American holly, Ilex opaca, and then your Dahoon holly, Ilex cassine. The flowers are all really similar. They're all going to be born in these small white clusters, and they're all going to put on these red berries that are super important for birds in the fall and winter. In these Mesic hardwood forests, we've got some clematis. Yep, I see your comment about gallberry. Gallberry is a holly as well. Ilex glabra, I think. And that one is actually going to be in the drier environments. And it's one that often comes in during fire suppression. So in a pine flatwood or a wettish pine flatwood, if it's not burning, it'll get full of gallberry. So back to these little lovely herbaceous wildflowers, we have another clematis. This is Clematis crispa. So you're going to find this one in those Mesic hardwoods. Another Ruellia. This is Ruellia caroliniana. This is our most common Ruellia, and it's going to be scattered throughout those forests. And of course, our beautiful rain lilies, the Zephyranthes adamasca. And I should have pulled up the link for the rain lilies. There is a common rain lily, non-native rain lily that has a pink tint to its petals, and people often get confused with those two. This one is going to bloom earlier in the season, and it's always going to be pretty pure white, although the older flowers may have some pink tinge on the outside of the petals. And then we have another really kind of hard to find orchid that you might be lucky enough to come across. This is Bletia spicata, crested coral root. It has undergone a genus change as well, and I believe a lot of people recognize it now in a different genus. But if you go with Bletia spicata, it'll come up as well. And then we have some vines. So vines are interesting, right? They're fringe species. You're going to find them kind of on the edges of these hardwood forests. We have trumpet vine, Campsis radicans. You may also come across crossvine, Bignonia, and that's going to have different leaves. It's not going to have these compound leaves like this, but the flowers look very similar. Of course, coral honeysuckle, a favorite. And again, this one you'll find in a lot of different habitats. It's pretty generalist. We do have a few passifloras. We've got Passiflora lutea, the yellow passion flower, and Passiflora incana. And this one you might find in drier areas as well. This one's predominantly going to be, the yellow is predominantly going to be in the hardwood forest. Passiflora incarnata is the purple passion flower. And then closing out our Mesic hardwood forest section with just a funky little guy. This is our ghost pipes. Ghost pipes are believe it or not, are in the blueberry family, Ericaceae. But as many folks probably are aware, they do not they don't photosynthesize, so they rely on fungal connections with oaks and other trees to get their nutrients. And those come up in the fall in the hardwood forest. All right, so our final habitat, we're getting into the hydric hammocks. There's a lot of crossover between the Mesic hardwood and the hydric hammocks, but with the hydric hammocks, what we're really talking about really right along the rivers and streams and springs that we have in this area. So you can't talk about the hydric hammocks in the spring without the rhododendron. This is our probably, I think, the only one you're going to come across in this part of the state, although we do have a few different rhododendrons in Florida. So this is Rhododendron cannensens, sweet pincer azalea. And it's just beautiful. Another one you can smell in the air when you come across a cluster of it. The sphinx moths really seem to enjoy these. I've seen them on these plants numerous times. In these really wet areas, we're going to come across plants like the jack in the pulpit. Kicking myself for not labeling these on the presentation. Jack in the pulpit, we're going to come across also the lizard's tail. So that's our Saurus, Saurus cernus, the lizard's tail, and Itea virginica, the sweet spire. So this is going to be kind of a small, not typically very dense populations, although this is a good one. You can see some here. There's quite a few clustered there, as opposed to the lizard's tail, which is just going to grow in really, abundance. And then the Itea is more of a shrub that's going to grow kind of right over those right over a stream. Indigo, this is a lovely one. I should have labeled these pictures. Apologies. So this is a Morpha fruticosa, false indigo. This is going to be a large shrub, but you can find this really dense along some in some hydric hammocks as well as Mesic hardwoods. And then we've got, getting into kind of our wetlands, we've got another Asclepias, right? So our Asclepias perennis, our swamp milkweed, is going to grow in a really wet environment. Iris savannarium. This is another iris. The genus is really murky when you get into it, but savannarium or savannarum is, I think, the most common across the state. And then, of course, our lovely pickerel weed, Pontidaria. What's the species on Pontidaria? Cordata, so Pontidaria cordata. And of course, these two are almost fully in the water a lot of the times. This one's going to be more on the edge, but can be in almost muck. Now, again, these hydric hammocks, I kind of had, so we're going to get in the water now, right? So along spring runs and river runs, you'll find these three oftentimes together. The Lobelia cardinensis. I don't even know the common name for that one, cardinal flower, which makes sense. The little spatterdock, the Nymphar advena, and of course our spring run spider lilies. Spring run spider lilies, which are, oh no, I'm losing it. We have a lot, oh, it's Hymenocallis, that's what it is. So Hymenocallis rotata is the spring run spider lily. We have a lot of Hymenocallis in Florida, but I really think the spring run is the primary one in north central Florida. And then, of course, elderberry. You'll see this growing in abundance along roadsides. This is Sambucus, Sambucus canadensis. It'll put on those beautiful, edible, bright, dark purple to black berries in the summer that birds also enjoy. Again, right along the water now, we're going to have our Carolina rose, our Rosa palustris. This is a really thorny kind of, it's not even really a shrub. It kind of needs to crawl up something, but it's also not a vine, right? It's just like a thicket plant. Our buttonbush, Cephalanthus. Occidentalis. Pollinators love this. You're going to see a lot of this in those wetter areas. And then of course in the fall, the climbing aster covering the sides of the spring runs and some of the rivers. There's just very little more beautiful than that scene. So I hope that was a good overview of kind of the different habitats and not even near all. I started working from a list of 200 wildflowers and kind of narrowed it down to what you really will often see in the field. But there's just so much more. So I do have some resources to share if you want to dive deeper into these. On our website, the Florida Wildflower Foundation, we have over 400 wildflower plant profiles. So you can find those on our website at flawildflowers.org/plant profiles, and you can explore many of the plants we talked about today, have them. And it includes a description, some history, as well as growing conditions if it's something you can bring into your own landscape. The Atlas of Florida Plants is an online database of vouchered plant specimens from Florida herbaria. So it's very useful. I visit it almost every single day. I highly recommend checking it out and you can search it by county or by area. So if you really want to zone in on a place, you can search by family, genus. It's just got a lot of capabilities. And this is Richard Wonderland is one of the founders of this, and he's a prominent Florida botanist. We also have the Flora of the Southeastern U.S. This is another database out of North Carolina Botanical Garden at UNC. This is out of Alan Weekly's lab. He's another really prominent botanist. And I always like to mention when I'm sharing these resources with folks, taxonomy-wise, Richard Wonderland tends to be a bit of a lumper. So he's going to keep some of those species together when other taxonomists may be wanting to split them out, whereas Weekly is more of a splitter. So a lot of times if you compare these databases, you will see some differences in how they list species. And some of that is just deciding whether or not to adopt newer research, and some of that may just be something hasn't been updated. And then also iNaturalist is a really great resource. I use it often to kind of check out what to expect in an area I might be visiting. I also use it in the field all the time for identification. And it's great because if you are contributing to it, you're also adding to a whole pool of community science. So with that, thank you so much for having me. It was really great to chat with y'all today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, you already answered my question. How do you tell apart the pineland hibiscus and the rose mallow?
Ah, good. Yeah. So, yeah, they'll be kind of in different spots. And the rose mallow is also going to be a much taller plant. The pineland hibiscus tends to be kind of small and shrubby, and its leaves are a bit more palmate oftentimes. But yeah, that flower, I mean, you really can tell because one has the white reproductive parts and the other one's reproductive parts are red.
Mm-hmm. Along the rivers, I think we sometimes see hibiscus leavis, which is slightly different rose mallow.
Okay.
The Halbert leaf, it's called.
Yeah, that one's not as common, but that's cool.
Got anything to say about invasive species?
I have so much to say about invasive species. Anything specific?
Sure. How do you get rid of a Japanese climbing fern?
Oh, that's really difficult. So Japanese climbing fern, Lygodium japonicum, it spreads by spore, and it's a vine. It's a viney fern. Well, it's a fern, but it's a viney fern. And so it's got I would recommend going to the University of Florida's Center for Aquatic and Invasive Plants website. They may have a control manual for that one. They certainly probably have a profile on it, which is going to include kind of best management practices for dealing with it, and maybe even herbicide recommendations. And you can reach out to them directly as well, and they're pretty good at giving you kind of a good plan of attack for things like that. But that is a really difficult one, both to contain and to really get to die back completely. But yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out to them if you have a a specific area you're working on, they can give you kind of a more detailed plan. You could also check in with the FWC private lands. If you're dealing with a bigger area, they can also help with coming up with management plans that include invasive species control. So they oftentimes have really good recommendations as well beyond just Lygodium, really for kind of any invasives you may be dealing with on a larger property.
We have one spot that's such a problem. We actually had a TV reporter from WCTV Tallahassee to come out and do a story on it.
Wow. It's of Lygodium.
Sorry,
The Lygodium is really bad.
the Japanese climbing fern, if that's, yes, Lygodium, yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
dealt with it by, it turns out what it was mostly growing on was Chinese privet and Chinaberry. So we dealt with it by chopping all that down and mowing it frequently.
Oh, good. Well, that's really helpful. Oftentimes, it grows well in pine plantation settings. So, if it's in your pines, you don't necessarily want to chop them all down. And so that's good that it was you were able to get lots of birds with less stones.
Yeah. So yes, it would be useful to label the slides. I'm surprised you can remember as many of those as you did.
I can label it and send y'all a PDF if that would be helpful at all to have in your files, but I'm definitely gonna do that for future presentations. I do have a list, but takes me a minute to find it.
Yeah, sure. A labeled PDF would be great. I'm a constant disappointment to my aunt, who was a botany professor at Vanderbilt. She always wanted me to learn botany, but all the memorization, I can't do it.
Oh, it's tough. I know. I mean, I'm always, even the ones I know, like every year, because one of my favorite things to do is go out and look for wildflowers. And I have my different spots I go to every year. And every spring, when I see the same things I saw last year, I have to look them up again. Like, okay, let me look this up again. I can remember what it is. But there's so many useful tools now. And I always tell people too, if you can learn the characteristics of some of the larger genuses, like we talked about, there's Ilex and I'm spacing on what some of the other, like the pawpaws. I'm often happy if I can get to genus, especially with ones where we have a lot of different species that look really similar. I feel good about myself if I can be like, oh, I know that's a pawpaw. Might not know exactly which one, but I know that.
Do you know what Ilex vomitorium was traditionally used for?
Well, I know that it got its name from the idea that indigenous people would use it as a purgative, right? They would brew a really heavy tea and then it would make them thaw up. But I've also heard that's greatly exaggerated because you can like Yaupon tea is quite lovely. There's actually a company in Florida that sells Yaupon tea, the Yaupon brothers. And I've heard that it was actually propaganda because the tea companies didn't want competition with the native coffee. And so they made that story up, but I don't know. So I would love for someone to verify that.
Well, they called it the black drink when they were actually using it, the Native Americans, and they would drink it before they had their community meetings to make everybody alert.
Ah, okay. See, that's a side of it I hadn't heard. I always heard they would drink it before they went to battle, and it would make them throw up and kind of purge, I guess, any kind of bad energy or whatever. So that's interesting. That's a better take. Oh, I can stop sharing my screen also.
You should come up. We'll brew you some. We can drink it.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's a forager, so she brews it occasionally as well.
Well, you can bring it then.
Yeah.
Bring your sister. Janet, do you have any questions?
Oh, you're muted, Janet. Sorry.
Of those things, I've probably personally seen maybe about 75% of them.
Oh, good.
Just out of curiosity, which ones are edible right there that I don't have to boil or cook or dry or any of that. Do you know?
That's a good question. So elderberry flowers you can eat. I'm not a forager, so I'm always super like, double check any advice I give you. Pickerel weed I know is quite edible, but I don't know if you need to cook it first. Let's see, I'm kind of scrolling through. If you're in a patch of Passiflora incarnata, you probably already know this, but if the fruits are ripe, and the ripe fruits are going to be when they're actually like wrinkly looking, you can of
Mhm.
course, grab those and eat them off the thing. The berries, so the vaccinium, so especially, they don't all taste good, but the shiny blueberry, the Vaccinium arsenites, the low-growing one, those are delicious.
Mhm.
That's definitely safe to eat. But yeah, anytime you're gonna eat something, absolutely 100% check that it's okay, because that is not my area of expertise.
Most of the smilax or greenbrier shoots are edible. You can just break them off and eat them right there, or you can collect some, put them in a salad.
It has like a asparagus taste to it. That's my son does that. He's aware that you can send him every season.
Mhm.
He's 8 years old, so he's like, oh, I can eat that.
And of course, blueberries, huckleberries.
Mhm. And I didn't include the blackberries, the rubus genus.
Mm.
Those are good too.
Did you include beautyberry? I didn't see that one.
Thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I think I had it and then I just was having to whittle down, so I took it out. But beautyberry, yeah, it's going to be in those Mesic hardwoods and those. That's a funny one because as popular as it is, the berries don't have really any taste. When you make jelly with it, you add quite a bit of sugar. But
Mm.
I think they
The
get
berries have a subtle taste if you wait till they're really ripe in October.
okay. That's the trick.
And yes, it makes an excellent jelly, and you can make wine out of it.
I haven't. I've had the jelly. I have not had the wine.
Come up, we'll let you have some wine. Janet is organizing all sorts of social events.
Oh, great. Yeah. Keep us in the loop.
Lori, Jenny, got any questions? I guess not Lori, she seems to have dropped off. Jenny Ryan, got any questions?
Somebody did make a comment. Thank you for the delightful presentation.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Pass that along.
And Jenny's my coworker, so
Oh, if she has questions, you've heard them before.
probably.
Mhm. I second the delightful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jenny sends a laughing face.
And I wasn't sure because I noticed in the event announcement, it mentioned something about creating habitat for the plants. We also have a pretty comprehensive presentation of incorporating native plants in your own landscape that we can tailor to a region. So would be happy to provide something like that in person or on a webinar as well, if you are looking for
Another webinar, Janet.
Follow up. Okay, anything else today before I stop the recording?
All these webinars are recorded. You can find them on YouTube. You can look on WALS.net. That's 2 W's, WWALS.net. Look under outings or under about for WALS webinars, and there you'll find links to all of the ones that have been around before and a list of what's coming up soon.
Oh, great.